My name is Michael Belcher. I'm a cinematographer. And one thing that I find to be true about filmmaking and watching films is that when they reach a certain level, they can appear to be effortless, as if the world of the film was always there, as if the lives of the characters are as natural and complex and complete as my own. And it's amazing when this happens. Um, as an audience member, I feel like this is where I can really get lost in a movie. And so many things in the filmmaking process have to go well, have to be functioning for this to occur. And in my experience, it's just a huge amount of labor behind the scenes to create this illusion. And I would say it's a kind of a blissful labor for me, a serene sort of effort. Um, but I would describe it as very, very hard work. And so lately, when I hear the phrase movie magic, the first thing that comes to mind is not like a camera trick or some special effect, some editing technique, but simply the way in which a certain kind of well-crafted film can feel effortless. And one film to me that has this sort of easeful quality is Dazed and Confused, the 1993 film by Richard Linklater. It was chosen for this conversation by my guests, director Sean Dunne and producer Cass Greener. A little bit about Sean and Cass. They are an American documentary and commercial filmmaking team based in New York. And they have made some of my all-time favorite documentaries, truly, including Florida Man, Cam Girls, Oxiana, which premiered at Tribeca and won Best Documentary Feature there, and the Best New Documentary Director. The Archive, which premiered at Sundance and was nominated for an Emmy. American Juggalo, which was named Documentary of the Year by the Short of the Week website. Sean and Cass have been awarded 8 Vimeo staff picks, and Sean was awarded the Vanguard Award at the San Francisco Doc Fest. They have a production company called Very Ape. They also host a podcast called the Very Ape Podcast, which I highly recommend. And here it is, my talk with Sean and Cass. Okay, Sean and Cass, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us,
for
Mike.
having us, man. We love you. That was great.
And I can't, but you didn't mention Sweet Nothing, which is our best work.
Oh yeah, dude. You didn't even mention the movies you shot with us.
Yeah. So
or Joshua Tree.
I shot 2 short docs called Joshua Tree and Sweet Nothing, which are 2 of my favorite projects of my career, without a doubt.
Oh, me too, man. Wait, I get that question a lot. They're like, "What's your favorite thing you've made?" And I'm like, "Sweet Nothing." I mean, it's the most recent thing we've made, but also like, God, I haven't felt the urge to make a film since then because it got out such like I was like, this is exactly what I intended on making, and it's not often you could pull that off, and that was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Happy to hear that. And yeah, it's one of those experiences I just want to like hit, like multiply.
Yeah.
And it's so good. So when I first talked to you about doing this podcast, Sean immediately said Dazed and Confused.
Yeah, you asked us, and I think we both kind of said it in harmony because, like, we were both like, what is a movie we wish we made? And we both kind of looked at each other like, Dazed and Confused, you know?
It seems not obvious, but to us it feels obvious because we don't, while we make documentaries, and Dazed and Confused is obviously not a documentary, it still is like stylistically an approach in harmony with what we're all about. Creating a vibe, capturing a vibe, spreading a vibe, and so for us it's a high achievement that Richard Linklater did with that film.
Oh, absolutely. It's so us. And doesn't everyone wish they made that movie?
I know, how much fun would that have been?
Yeah, and the vibe is amazing because in a way, I mean, it's funny. Look, I mean, there's a way in which I think about you guys in terms of the films you make, but then I also think about the experience of just being with you. And this experience of being with you is very similar to Dazed and Confused in the sense of that vibe being so strong. I mean, just the way you guys play music in a room and set the tone, there's such a strong feeling that the soundtrack for Dazed and Confused is just a really powerful driver for the whole thing. And I feel like you guys use the same device of playing music when you're making work and just in your personal lives.
Yeah, I mean, we like to keep the vibes immaculate, and I always get upset when I go into a situation where someone seems to not be tending to the music and the lights and just the overall vibe. So it's definitely something that matters a lot to us. And it's funny because I think that's what Linklater did with the actors and anyone who's involved in the film. He was sending them mixtapes or mix CDs at the time. So it was very much the pulse of the movie came from music, and that was a decision he was making early on. And I was just reading that originally when he thought of this movie, the little seedling of the idea for it was to have a whole movie that was the length of this ZZ Top 8-track. So the movie would start and there'd just be two shots, one of them putting on this 8-track and one of them taking it out, and in between it would just be one shot of two guys having a conversation while they drive around. And when Linklater sat down to kind of sketch that out, what they might say or whatever, it just grew and grew and grew and grew into the film that we all have seen.
Mm.
So I thought that it was a very interesting seedling of where it started. The specific ZZ Top album, like it was so evocative for him that he ended up wanting to honor it by making a whole movie where people were, the conversations you'd have during that record while you were driving around. It's fucking cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, and my favorite thing about Linklater is he allows you to just like land in a moment and be there. And so the initial idea is like they're in the moment within this driving of the car, but then it just like expanded out the entire feature where you're just like this series of moments where there's not this real definitive arc and conflict and resolution. It's more of like, oh, this is what it felt like, the last day of high school for these freshmen or seniors, and kind of, and it's all about these in between moments, the night where the party got canceled and you thought it was going to be something and then it becomes something else, and I really love being able to vicariously live through with the characters as an audience.
Well, the way he dilates time, it's such a bold move for. It was his third movie, but it was really only his second, like, bigger on-taking. And just to say, like, this whole film's going to take place in the evening of March or May 28th, 1976. Like that's the whole thing. And by the way, there's no plot. It's just moments with people. It's just letting you settle in. And so, I mean, it's weird. At the end of the movie, you're like, wait, that whole movie took place in the course of a night, but I feel like I know all these people. I feel like I've lived a lifetime with them. There's like an innate familiarity to everything that happens and everyone that comes on screen. You're like, oh, I know that motherfucker.
Mm.
Matthew McConaughey comes out for the first time, and you're just laughing.
He's so relatable
he's
too, because
so-
it's like the same character plays out generation over generation after generation. You know what I mean? It's like everyone has the Matthew McConaughey who like hangs around way too long after high school.
Yeah.
Is always, what is it? I keep getting older, but the girls all stay the same age.
Yeah, that's what he loves about high school girls. It's fucking great.
It's just all so ridiculous.
But there's a certain level of comfort, right? Like just everybody is so comfortable with each other. Even if they get along, don't get along, it really like nails that small town vibe, of like everywhere you go is sort of familiar, right? No one feels like lost. They're just like lost in their experience of adolescence maybe, but they really capture the hometown feeling. And that kind of makes me think about your work, which is so much about, like we're saying, kind of creating this vibe, getting into situations that are typically uncomfortable in many ways, but trying to get there and hold space for it in a way that lets it be as pure and honest and sort of realistically unfolding as possible. And that feels like a through line to me in some sense between your work and this film.
Oh yeah, we're very much inspired by really all Linklater stuff. I think he's definitely one of the most underrated American directors, and he was the first one long before. Being a director was even a twinkle in my eye. I was hearing him talk about how he does one for them and he does one for him, and I was like, "That's fucking cool," because like you'll see like he has movies like School of Rock, like it's a big movie, or The Newton Boys is like a big Hollywood movie, but like in between each one of those, he's working on projects that you're like, "Damn, how did you even get this made?" And like, I love. If people think of our work like that, like, how did you make this? Like, how the hell does Florida Man exist? Like, why? who the hell? Like, no, we didn't ask permission. We just fucking made it. That's how it exists. With Dazed and Confused, it's one of those things. If it's hard to believe it exists because there was no stars in it, and if you read the script, it was not the experience of what that movie was. And he said before he went into the making of it that if we just capture this script, we've done a massive underachievement. So there was a lot more spirit to be captured, and he's the right guy to do it. He's definitely tapped into spirit. And he worked with these people, and he let these actors, first-time actors, help him develop the script. And McConaughey probably had 2-3 lines in the original script, and he got on set, and they got him in costume, and they were like, let's find stuff for this guy to do. And he's writing as they go along. And, Linklater said, like, a lot of the best lines in the movie are stuff that the actors brought to him or stuff that spontaneously came up. And that's all of our movies are. They're all made of that stuff. I think there's there's a big pull in the documentary filmmaking world to kind of get your subjects to say something or get them to fall into the story that you have in your head. And we try to transcend all those temptations and just work with what the people are giving us, and don't put any kind of expectation on. Just show up like we'd show up to like we'd show up to hanging out with you. It's the same thing. You've worked with us. You see how it goes. It's not a big like, okay, here's gonna be our shot, guys, and then it's action and cut, and like it's not that kind of thing. It's happening on a very subtle plane because that's what we're trying to dig into. I just heard David Lynch talking about how the small fish, they reside on the surface. In order to get down to the deeper ones, you have to deepen yourself. If you want to catch the big fish, you have to go deep into yourself and expand your consciousness. And that's what we're trying to do. I feel like that's what Linklater's trying to do. And if you watch all of his work, like, this is the guy that made Boyhood. Like, that's one of the most profound, touching, kind of unbelievable films I've ever seen. And it's so subtle. He doesn't need to do anything flashy with the cinematography or the colors or anything like that. He's very confident, and it's kind of hard to believe that someone making their second feature could be that confident to say, no stars. This is going to be much more effective if nobody recognizes these people. I mean, we've come to Ben Affleck. That was his first movie. Matthew McConaughey, Parker Posey, like, all these people became legends. But to have the confidence at a young age to say, here's the best way to serve this project, and to fight for that. And he didn't have a good time making this movie, really, at all. It was an uphill battle. So we definitely we hold him as a spirit animal in our world when we're out there. We honor Linklater when we're directing movies and television.
Yeah, like the through line, like Sean was saying earlier, was just, I mean, he even cast people who were just like locals in Texas, that out of high schools, or, the two like main characters, the main roles are just Texas locals who didn't have a eye towards acting at all.
And don't act anymore.
So it's just such a, it just shows how he prioritizes making the actors comfortable over everything. And I think that familiarity and that comfort translates to the screen, which is exactly what we want to do. We want to get the best of people, and we want to get the best of people by making them feel like themselves and comfortable. And so,
yeah, it's relatable. And the way in which you're talking about this, deepening yourself in order to go to the deeper idea, deeper meaning, deeper truth. And that feels like it's all over this film in so many ways, because outside of the craft of it, the story itself, there's the way in which, the whole film, I was thinking about it as this sort of, mass initiation process.
Yeah, dude.
But everybody in the school is just, passing through the doors of this transition into adulthood or some form of independence.
Yeah, that was we were just rewatching, and I was just like, there's all these sacred, unspoken teenage rituals playing out in this movie. Like, everywhere you turn, it's like, oh, now here's the ritual of the last day of school, and here's what that looks like from the boys' perspective and from the girls' perspective. Now here's the ritual of meeting up at the pool hall, the ritual of figuring out how to get beer, the ritual of spreading the word about a party.
Your first toke.
Yeah, your first toke, your first time smoking weed. Like, there's this like very cool American ritualistic thing going on that I do think is uniquely American. I don't think you could have made a film that kind of feels like this anywhere else. There's something about the time period when this took place that's just like a fucking bummer. And it was just kind of like, kids really looking at the world like, I don't even know what the fuck I have to look forward to. One of the girls in the movie says, doesn't it feel like everything in life is to get ready for a next thing? Like, when is the thing?
Yeah.
Everything feels in preparation for something.
Yeah.
And I think that this movie in particular has a way of like settling you into the moment and showing these rituals in a way that you're like, oh, this is funny. This is fucking necessary. This is like definitive coming of age type of shit. I think that's where this movie kind of took it up a level from like American Graffiti or Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I love those movies, but this like really took it into another level where you could really feel it. And again, that's why I say it's like really hard to believe that this movie exists, and it failed when it came out too. No one cared about it until it was on VHS. So yeah, what a gift, what a weird one to have pierced through, because again, there's no plot, and I love that, and that's something we pride our films on, is to take people on a ride, because that's what life is. And I know we want to live the type of life that feels plotless and feels like there's not the thing that we're doing to get to the thing to get to the thing. It's just it feels like light and free and plotless. It feels like a Grateful Dead song. It feels like it could go anywhere at any point. And that's what this film was. And it's just like such a tasty slow burn to make a whole movie in that vibe.
Yeah.
Not have it build up to the big culminating moment where the kid fell off the water tower, or someone killed somebody, or there was a massive breakup, or these friends ended up hating each other. There's like little things. There's like little mini movies playing out in every scene, but it's not building towards anything. The big thing that it's building towards, and the thing they mention the whole film, is we got to get Aerosmith tickets. It's the most important thing of the summer, and that's the last shot. Is they're cruising, and Slow Ride by Foghat comes on, and fucking one of the best songs you could ever put in a movie. And that comes on, and they just rocking and rolling down the street, smoking a joint, going to get Aerosmith tickets. It's just like, oh man, God.
Yeah, there's something about the
ritual.
The ritual, but just the truth of it. When you were kind of mentioning the other films that reside in a similar genre, and thinking about this one kind of piercing through amongst them without having a kind of bombastic plot or some reveal or surprise or twist. I think the truth just can't be denied in the end, and
Yeah.
seeing all these little moments that play out, like you're saying. I mean, it's actually funny. I was looking at it and just watching how fast it cuts. I mean, it comes in late and leaves early. Like every little scene, it's like really tight. It's surprising me. I was like, wow, it's like so much craft in here, and it's really playing with tension and interest and keeping you really close, but just peppering you with all these little bits of truth that are just like you're saying, that feeling of high school, like it's all preparation and what are we preparing for. It's just like, I mean, I think it's so relatable.
And I think that feeling too of it just moving was so of the time, and it was probably one of the first movies that really stumbled on that formula. But I think it did so out of necessity, because Linklater said that his rough cut, his cut of this is 2 hours and 45 minutes, and the real movie is 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So, and I know he had to lose scenes here and there, but I think for the most part, it was just like, let's just tighten it, and they just tightened it down. And it doesn't feel rushed, but it does feel like it's moving. The way a night feels, the way it feels like, I know we have it all the time where we're like having a great fucking time, and it's like 10:30 at night, and it's just like you're hitting the peak of the night, and everyone's laughing and having a good time, and you realize you're like, this is temporary. This is temporary. All of this is gonna end. This night is gonna end. Like, fucking start soaking it in, dude.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like that film has that. Like you can feel like this time in their life, it might feel so important and heavy and real to them, but like that's what it's like to be a teenager. That's what it's like to be in high school. Like it feels such a big deal. But when this movie kind of shows it from all these perspectives, you realize how temporary it all is and how temporary their states of being are, and that they're just going to be in high school for one more year, and then they're all going to go off and do all these crazy things. So your mind starts to put together the stories of who these people were, but who they're going to be, just from this little taste that you get, this little sample you get from one night in their life. It's really cool. Linklater's brilliant at that with the Before trilogy, the Before Sunset, Before Midnight, and Before Sunrise. He did it with that film Suburbia, another great one. Yeah, I think he has a bunch of films that
Everybody
take place.
wants some.
Everybody Wants Some is great. It's a spiritual sequel to this that he made a couple years ago. Fucking brilliant. So it's just about a weekend of a college baseball team showing up at school the weekend before school starts, and it's just fucking brilliant. You're just watching these guys hang out, and you're just spending time in their life, and I feel like Linklater's the master of that for sure. And we try to pull that into our thing. Like Florida Man. It's meant to feel like a couple days in the life, a weekend. Like this is what it's like if you drifted around Florida and gave these guys the time of day. That's what it would feel like. Our films, Joshua Tree and Sweet Nothing. Those are we're capturing a little slice of life from a portion of an evening, and you're learning so much about these people through that. I mean, obviously because they're going into chemical portals that to take them to far out places, but it's that feeling, and it's slowing things down. I think we did that really effectively in the films that we made together, and you and I talked about that a lot before going into it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, the thing that keeps popping in my head here is this Americanness of it, right? Like you said earlier, it's like very specifically American culture. And I think when I think of you guys, I think of you, and I mentioned it in the bio as being like American. I feel like there's something
Yeah.
about you guys that feels like you're really investigating this specific culture that, we find here in this country. And
Yeah.
what jumped out at me, just to go back to that, like a bit about the initiation, um, I was like just having like anxiety. So as a somewhat new parent, I'm just feeling there's no parents around. There's like no parental like I don't mean that in the sense of like there should be more discipline or more control, but there's just no like guidance, right? There's like all this.
No.
I'm just watching like drunk driving and
Yeah.
like somewhat sketchy thing. I'm like shit, and like knocking down putting bowling
Mailboxes.
balls in people's cars, yeah,
And
and
the
just
only time they do,
realizing,
do when they do depict adults, they're like this authoritarian, like rule enforcing, like no, the party's not happening at our house tonight. No, young man, you gotta fucking, I'm pulling a gun on you because you smashed my windshield, like that kind of shit. Like that's the only way that the adults are the coach. It's like this oppressive, fascistic, like sign this thing and tell me you're not going to smoke pot and drink and fornicate this summer. It's like that's how adults are depicted in that movie, which is very American because you're seeing their kids who have this wild spirit.
And that's where Matthew McConaughey comes in at the end and is like, they're just going to try to do more and more rules as you get older, watch out for it, And I think there's like a underlying anarchistic energy that we share with him
Yeah,
in a lot of ways,
yeah, totally.
And yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like a Lord of the Flies feeling where it's just kind of animalistic, because there's so many ways in which, like, I'm thinking about the moment where the young girl who's a freshman is hanging out with the older guy, and they kind of kiss on her front lawn, right? It's
Yeah,
like the sun's coming up. They're kind of
yeah,
like sharing this like really intimate moment, and she's like not worried at all about what what her parents might think or do, or if they're even up.
yeah.
It's like blowing my mind. I'm like, wow,
You
there's
can't remember that, Mike? You can't remember those nights that you felt like should never end?
for sure. I just remember the moment where I felt safe enough to make out in my own driveway with
Yeah, totally.
upperclassmen. There's a way in which yeah, it made me sort of, because I think there's, we're talking about the level of truth in this film, and it's scary to think about a whole country, a whole culture of people who are not being supported in their transitions into adulthood or independence or
Oh,
whatever it is.
yeah.
Mm.
Talk about rites of passage. There,
Yeah,
there, there are none. there is no guidance. And I think that informs a lot of our film work, is examining this culture and the people in it that are lost. That's what Dazed and Confused feels like, and that's what a lot of our films feel like, is people that are lost but that are figuring out how to cope. And we're lost because we don't deal with our shadow. We don't deal with the oppressive system we live under. We don't deal with how we ended up on this land and who we took it from. And we don't deal with the have-nots. We don't like to look at that. So what we do is we try to zoom in on the people that other people might consider losers and say, this is you. This is all of us. We're all fucking lost here. We can try to pretend, but we're lost. And some people are finding the way, and those are very interesting subjects in themselves. But everybody has a bit of wisdom in them, and I think that's what Linklater did so well in this film and all his films, and that's what we try to do in ours. Is like, don't write this motherfucker off. If you and we'll set people up in our movies to write a motherfucker off. Like we'll tease it out where you're just like, I can't get down with this dude, and then we'll hit you with some bit of wisdom that is you, and it speaks to your heart. And that's I think that's just like really what we need to be using this medium for, is to try to transcend separation and the feeling of otherization. And when you have an ensemble, when you do something like what he did, anyone can see themselves in any one of these characters. There might be one character you're like, oh, that was me. That's exactly. But you look at all these guys and you're like, oh yeah, I struggled with that too, or I had those triumphs too. I might not be the star quarterback or whatever, but I know what that guy's going through. Or I might not be the guy that's in his 20s hanging out with high schoolers, but you could see the temptation. You could see why that would be a funny thing to do. You see a bit of yourself in all of them, and that's such a gift. Any movie that does that doesn't further our feeling of otherization, is like, that's our type of shit.
Yeah, and there's a moment that is actually my favorite, like, not a single moment, but there's a couple of moments around this little beat for the Adam Goldberg character, when he finally approaches that guy and punches him.
He dumps a beer on his head.
Yeah, well, first, like, he expresses this awareness where he's like, I don't want this to be the thing that, down the line I look back and realize that it really changed my character, right? So he's like, sort of like really self-aware of what he's doing and how he wants his life to turn out by the way he acts in this moment. So there's that beat with his self-awareness is like interesting and kind of intellectual, but the piece that really makes it, I think, go down to a deeper, bigger fish idea is that when he does have this confrontation, he punches a guy and then he gets punched several times. When they're getting pulled, I guess there's two things from here. When they're getting pulled off of each other, the other guy's like, yo, come over here, I'm gonna hit you again. And and Adam Goldberg's character is like hyperventilating, like basically crying, right? Like, yeah, he's actually in the truth of what conflict actually looks like. Like his nervous system is just, he's got adrenaline. He's like, he's got those short, shallow, scary breaths, and he's basically about to cry and like hold his friend. And I just thought that choice to let it be real in that way, where this character does this thing that's requiring a lot of bravery and requiring a lot of like somewhat, insane thing to do. And then to see it play out and to see that beat be depicted as like almost bursting into tears, I was just like, whoa, it took my breath away. I was like, that just felt so real. It felt like a really deep truth in that. The way conflict actually feels.
Oh yeah, and I feel like that movie's full of moments like that where he'll hang around in a scene, just that extra beat so you could see the look on the kid's face when he just threw the bowling ball through the thing. It's not like it just ends on that, like, where it feels like the edit should be, but just like let's hang a bit longer to feel what that really was like, and that's where the relatability really just comes in spades. Is like, you're like, that I know how that feels like, where you do the badass thing, you punch the guy, and usually you just cut away to the next scene, the next whatever. That's just the thing that happened. But you hang around and you see, like, yeah, that's the relatable part, is where he's hyperventilating, because that's how it feels. I don't know if you've ever gotten fights when you were a kid. I got in so many fights, and they don't feel good. You cry afterwards, and it's not something you would ever admit when you were a kid, and it's hard for me to admit now. But you have these moments of conflict, and it breaks your heart. it fucking breaks your heart. And you know, a lot of other things in that movie, like I'm saying, there's a lot of other things that go down where I love that they hang around for the moment after the kiss, or the moment when the kid comes home at the end of the night and his mom's like, "Are you drunk?" You know, and he's like, "No." He's just like kind of like, no, you know, like it's just like hanging out for that extra little thing is like what's infused that film with so much spirit and relatability.
Just
Yeah.
such a good time.
And
And yeah, a good time.
speaking to the this thing you said about what the medium is for, I actually had that question written down, kind of like one of my last ones, is thinking about, you know, how this fits into the way you'd like to see the medium of movie making used. And you mentioned it, you know, to show connection and to breed connection, or at least show the humanity in all of us, or the wisdom that every
Yeah.
person has in some way. And there's this moment after that fight when the quarterback is kind of, they're going off to the next place, and he walks by that group of sort of the intellectual, sort of, you know, nerdy-ish group of friends, and he goes past Adam Goldberg's character, and he's like, "Hey, Ali," like he kind of just says like, "Hey," in this like
Yep.
really supportive way, you know, where you just watch this guy, you know, do a big bold thing and get sort of beat up afterwards, and he's probably really rattled, and it's this really kind gesture, you know. It's like such an amazing thing for humanity in general, but also just a great character beat for that guy, just to show the way in which he is the quarterback, cool guy. But he is also very clearly has the intention to have a life where he's fishing deeper, you know.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
boom, like that moment of him just saying, "Hey, Ali," as he's walking by him, it just like that also is just like, oh, I just like almost brought tears straight to my eyes. Just the act of kindness is so pure, you know,
Yeah,
so effortless.
and that character has a few of those throughout the movie. You know, he was the one that they were going to fight a couple, like maybe a couple scenes before they were going to fight,
Mm,
but he stepped in
right.
and was like, "Yo, he's cool." He's telling that caveman type dude who wanted to fight, like, "Yo, no, he's cool." And you could tell like everyone respects this guy. Everyone knows this dude's cool, so he kind of, you know, his opinion matters. So when you do give, when you get a shout out from that dude, it's like it hits, it lands.
Do you guys
I
know when you go ahead, guess?
no, I was just gonna answer, I guess, what you were asking, which is kind of like, I hope more movies get made in this way that is like, let's have a good time making it. You know what I mean? I think that's what Linklater does, is like he wants the process to be enjoyable for everyone involved, and I think a lot of times that can get lost in the shuffle of movie making. And I think we just want to see more of that. You know, like artistic expression that, you know, is not that it's easy, but that it's like enjoying the process is a big part of it.
Mm. Yeah, and you know, I think that the thing he did so effectively and that influenced us so much is I think of this thing that Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead says, is like he said, "We're not in the music business, we're in the transportation business." And that's totally what Linklater does. That's what we try. We don't feel like we're part of the movie business. We're part of the transportation business. We'll take you somewhere. We'll take you somewhere inside yourself where you're seeing these people as your brothers and sisters, or you're seeing them as sacred reflections of who you are. And to the point where if a character in one of our things, or if a subject in one of our things is bothering you, I tend to think like that's on you. That's really on you. I think you're recognizing something in yourself that you don't like, and this person is personifying that. That's why we brought them to the screen. So to me, it's always, you know, it's about heart expansion. It's not about making movies and accolades and validation and money and all that stuff. It's about affecting people, because we don't make money off this stuff. We make films with our commercial money, and we go broke making them, and then we put them out for free, and just hoping then that the circuit gets completed and the audience begins to start to cast meaning on these things. And you watch them years later, and they're shining brighter than they did somehow when you first made it. And you're like, wow, thank God I was present for that moment. Thank God we were having a good time on set, because it comes through. You can feel it in these movies. Even the stuff we've made, you know, those were heavy days. Those were heavy days in my shooting life. Those were fucking rough ones for me, because having psychedelics around and people, going to the most vulnerable places you can imagine on camera. It felt like a big responsibility. And, Linklater said that about this movie. He said he felt a big responsibility because this was a lot of people's first movies, and he didn't know if it was going to be good for them. He didn't know if people were going to ridicule them for it, or how people would receive this piece of work. And it ended up working out for everybody involved. But he took that as a big responsibility, and he had fun with them, and was really trying to honor them in the edit room. And it's just like such an impressive thing. I don't think a lot of directors give a fuck about. I think that it's just like the actors are kind of like the cameras. It's just like it's another tool. It's another thing you're using on set, and you're almost dehumanizing them. And I think Linklater does the opposite, and that can definitely rub off on people who are making stuff with real people like ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. It really, I mean, what you just said there really speaks to, I think, the unique way in which you guys approach the form, really putting the human element first. And it comes through in this, for sure. There's nothing really dazzling in terms of, you know, lights and camera stuff. It's just
Yeah.
trying to, I think, just be as clear and direct as possible with the communication of just the truth that they're trying to get in the bottle.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I'm sure you've gotten this since we made the things together. It's like we'll put these films out, and they'll start making the rounds, or like there'll be a day where like all of a sudden 200,000 people saw them in one day, and you could tell like it really affected them. But it affected them in a way a movie hasn't maybe ever or in a really long time, and they don't know what to attribute it to. So they write to me being like, "What camera and lenses?" And I'm like, okay, I guess we could talk about that, or we could talk about how this made you feel, and we could talk about the wand, or we could talk about the wizard, or whatever you want to do. But we get talented people involved with our stuff, so I don't have to think about the cinematography. For Sweet Nothing, I feel like we had a 2-hour drive to location, just you and I, and we just hashed it out there. It was simple. We were just listening to the Grateful Dead, and I was just probably talking to you the way I'm talking right now, because I really only have one gear. But and just trying to honor that spirit and trying to go in there with everything ironed out. Like, so you understand what I'm trying to do. I understand what you're trying to do, and I just let you do your thing. And if anything, just the only thing I'll ever say is like get closer, or pull out a little bit or something like that. But I'm not up in your shit about how you're doing it or what you're even doing it with, because I trust you. And that's kind of the relationship you have to have going into projects like this, and probably projects like Dazed and Confused. There's got to be a lot of trust, because you're juggling a lot, especially as a director, the kind of the conductor of the vibe. It's it's important to me when we're on set that I don't come off like I'm directing, or that I'm really doing anything other than just chilling with the people. And I think that really helps our subjects have something to focus on, because otherwise I think that the setup can be quite overwhelming, trying to capture things like what we're trying to capture, and trying to bait and pull in those bigger fish. It's a tough thing to do, and when push comes to shove, it's all happening right there in the moment on a documentary. So you really got to have your shit in order. And you've obviously that's why we love working with you so much, is like you got your shit in order. Like, you know what you're there to do and what you want to do, and we have so much fun exploring. We have so much fun playing around and trying different things. And what's so fun is when you get into the edit, you get to really be the conductor then, because all the pressure of dealing with people is off the table, and I can be in the edit, and that's usually where the whole range of emotions that I feel during a project all comes out. And Kathy, our editor, Kathy Gatto, holds incredible space for that, and just a great translator, sculptor of the stuff that we bring back to her. So yeah, shout out to Kathy.
Yeah. I'm curious, Cass, what the movie watching experience is like for you, in the sense of, being a producer by trade, and when you watch a film that moves you. I mean, is it separate for you, the viewing experience and the sort of maybe, vocational inspiration you may feel about how to do your job?
You mean with watching other people's movies?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Dazed and Confused, but I mean, just broadly speaking.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like for me, every project's been so unique in how we produce it. It's kind of like, I think Sean's rubbed off on me in a way that I'm like, if you ever want to get serious, you might need to hire a different producer because you've kind of instilled this chill energy in me about like certain things being a priority that I don't really worry too much about even what the next film is. Like I'll worry about it when I get to it, and I'll worry about it when it's time to worry about it. But I don't know. I feel like enjoying this moment has become so important to just my relationship, even because like we were joking because we were watching about how a producer and director were how they were getting into it, Linklater and his producer during the making of
They hated each other.
they hated each other.
Yeah.
And we were just like laughing because there is this push and pull between money and creative and everything. And luckily with Sean and I, we have a pretty good working relationship because if I say, oh, we don't have the money, he's like, okay, cool, I'll make it work. You know what I mean? He's never like pushing me for more money.
Yeah.
Which is actually a very fortunate relationship to be in that way. And so yeah, I don't know. All I can say is like I'm very blessed in the relationship and kind of the line of producing that I'm in, because the way that it works best and the way the movies come together the best is the most effortless it is, the most natural it is, the most obvious place for what's the most obvious chill place to shoot this? Okay, cool, let's do that. Does it look great? Yeah, okay, awesome. You know what I mean? It's not riddled with being a tedious process. I just try to like I'm good at like seeing into the future and making sure there's no problems, like envisioning what could go wrong,
We've done the dance with like Cass being a more tedious producer, and like even if that's going on, she knows to kind of protect me from it at this point. If there's a lot of details, if there's a lot of stuff like that needs to be worked out, she just gets it sorted out, and I don't really know anything about it. And in terms of when we watch movies, it's a very sacred ritual, especially this time of year where it's getting dark at like 4:30, and it's cold, so it's hard to be outside. It's hard to be out. We're in a pandemic. It's hard to mix it up with people in the same way. So we're watching a lot of movies, and we take edibles when we watch them, and that helps us get fully immersed. I think the two go hand in hand. If people don't talk about that enough, I think edibles and films were like made for each other, and it helps us get immersed in it. But usually after we finish watching a movie is when we'll nerd out, like how the fuck did they do that? Like sometimes that'll be going through my head during the movie, but I try not to distract her with it because, like, we just want to let each other get caught up with it. But, like, we were just watching Linklater's film from 1998 called The Newton Boys the other day with McConaughey and Ethan Hawke and Vincent D'Onofrio. Amazing, fucking just dope period piece that was a total box office bomb, and, like, it probably didn't help Linklater's career at all because it was his first big Hollywood movie, but you just look at some of these setups and you look at the way they were able to make things look and feel old-timey. And after the movie, I'm just like when you're pulled out of the experience and the edible's kind of wearing off a little bit, you're just in awe of how these people what they had to do to pull this off. They had to have such focus and grace, and that's very important.
It's funny because I was just, when we were watching Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, there's like, that when they were shooting that, they didn't have walkie-talkies, you know what I mean? They didn't have cell phones, they didn't have beepers or whatever the fuck. They were like doing these like wide shots where you see, Paul Newman and Robert Redford
from like a mile away.
And then you see the horses.
They're like a dot in the screen, and then they come all the way up to the camera, and you're like, how did they communicate when it was time to go? Or like, it's just like we're blown away by that.
And how long it takes to get a shot set up and make sure the lighting's right. I mean,
to get horses to cooperate, like insane. Like anytime you see animals in a movie, I can't help but think about how did they do this? How did they produce this? Must have been an epic pain in the ass.
Yeah, I'm just free. I definitely think about it, but I'm definitely free of it because I'm like, that's not the business that we're in.
No.
Like that's like my skill set as a producer is completely different than their skill sets as producers.
Yeah.
You know,
we'd more likely find ourselves in a situation where we have to do stuff like that on a commercial. Is when we're usually like, oh, we got to work with kids, or we got to work with animals, or we need 2 cameras, or we got to have a helicopter shot, or pull out drones and dollies and all this stuff. That's not usually what we fuck with in our movies. We try to keep them as simple as possible to not distract the subject and to just try to get a moment with them and try to have a moment with them. But more and more, we're our favorite genre is westerns.
Right
and
now
we're just obsessed with them. You just watch them, you're like, man, they transport you back to those times. And if they're really well done, like to take you back into a time in America where it really was the Wild West, and you could kill someone in one town and just be like, I just got to go one town over and I'll be a free man. And it's just all so fucking dope. We get very caught up with westerns.
Yeah, what you're saying about looking at the way some people make films and how it seems just like a somewhat alien, makes me think about you guys as filmmakers and Linklater as being so like ruthlessly true to yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You have your interests, you have your skill sets, and I feel like you kind of fashion your way into making stuff that is true to what you can do, right? There's this way in which I think when we admire films as young people, we project ourselves onto it, and we idealize what could be, what we maybe want to be in our heads, but there's something you kind of have to get to eventually. And I think you guys have gotten there very early as young people to realize, okay, here's the voice that I find in my hands, and this is what it has to say, right? And you kind of move in that direction. I think a lot of people can spend a lot of years just chewing themselves up, trying to force themselves to be, to fit into a box that may not, suit their natural way of being. So that feels like a parallel between you guys and Linklater's, career in general, actually.
Yeah. I mean, he honors spirituality in every one of his movies, and the last scene in Boyhood where like he arrives at college and you followed this kid for 14 years, literally 14 years they filmed it for. And you follow this kid, and the last scene is him going off on a hike with some friends, and they offer him mushrooms, and it just ends with that. And it's just like, it ends with what is a very pivotal moment in someone's life. It's like he's about to discover the kingdom of heaven within, and just adding those little flourishes and not being super on the nose about it's all over all of his films. And sometimes he's more on the nose. What's that one where he rotoscoped it?
Waking Life.
Waking Life, dude. That film has more wisdom in it than anything I can think of. And
he doesn't hold back.
He doesn't hold back. That one's a little bit more on the nose, but just what a fucking achievement. If I had made that movie, I'd be like, cool, I'm good, man. I did it.
That's what I would, when we said this one and I was thinking about Waking Life, I was like, we could have said Waking Life too.
Waking Life feels like DMT. It's like liquid gold. It's like it feels out of reach. It just feels like slightly out of what,
like a dream, which it
is.
Like
a dream, like slightly out of something we could ever even come close to capturing. Whereas Dazed and Confused, it feels like if we were narrative filmmakers, that's the type of film we'd be trying to pitch. And quite frankly, we'd be getting denied left and right, because I don't even think he could make that movie now if he tried.
Oh, yeah. The only reason he was able to make the spiritual follow-up to it was because he had made Dazed and Confused, and it, after 10 years, it was like had this reawakening where, cult following of people screening it at, midnight theaters and that sort of thing. You guys
remember when you saw it for the first time?
I remember, this is so funny. I had a Dazed and Confused poster in my room before I had even seen the movie because it was just cool. It was just a smiley face that had stoned eyes and had a joint coming out. And I didn't even smoke weed. I'm like a 13-year-old kid when that came out. And I remember I had the poster and I was like, I really want to check that out. And I had the soundtrack, and it wasn't until probably a few years after it came out that I finally saw it. And I loved it just like a kid would. It's just like it's appealing because it feels real. It feels like very relevant. But since we've been together 10 years. We've probably watched that movie 7 or 8 times. Anytime we meet somebody who we're going to be spending any time with and they haven't seen that, we're like, oh, yes, we're about to have the fucking best time. We'll pop an edible and throw that on. So we've seen it many times together. But yeah, I first saw it probably in the late 90s. And I don't think I had the deep appreciation I do for it that back then that I do now, because you just realize how rare that was and that they don't make movies like that. And I don't even know how they put up a budget for that thing. You know, a plotless movie that was barely written. They fast tracked it. There was 30 films that were supposed to be in development before that, and they fast tracked it. They put it ahead of all those films before a script was even written. And like I said, the script probably didn't even really read like much. The studio was very disappointed with it. They said, this isn't funny enough. I don't even know what we're going to do with it. The distributor didn't really get behind it. I think it was Warner Brothers. They didn't really get behind it, so it kind of had a half-ass release, 150 theaters. And it wasn't until it came out afterwards on VHS and DVD that it really took off. And that's when I started to appreciate it more, when you could revisit something. And when you've started to see more films and realize, oh, this is rare. This is a rare gem that they made here.
And
Like,
probably Matthew McConaughey only getting more and more famous helped
definitely,
too, you know, stuff like that.
definitely. Yeah.
Really, or Ben Affleck, like that. Those were their first films.
Yeah.
How about you, Cass? When did you first see it?
Probably with Sean. Like I want to say that I saw it before him, but probably Sean showed me his DVD.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's nice.
That's how old we are.
Yeah. You guys will appreciate the. I actually only saw Dazed and Confused for the first time probably 10 years ago. Pretty
Wow.
sure. And I saw it, and it's like I was living almost a scene from the film in a different way, but I saw it in the McCarran Park pool before they redid it,
cool.
right? Because they had it all
Yeah.
emptied and used for different kinds of events, and they were projecting 35 millimeter movies all summer, and they had a beautiful print that was just like the most amazing warm summer night, and
Dude.
it just soaked it in with a bunch of people, and the vibes walking out of that place at the end, you know, you just felt like you felt like you were just leaving that party, you know.
Yeah,
So nice.
totally. Yeah, that like when a movie feels you, what leaves you feeling like that, it's like the filmmaker has done their job. They've delivered the medicine. They have fed your hungry soul with something you didn't even know you needed. And you know, that I think that's probably why we revisit this movie more than any other.